We begin the current Daf, Mesechtas Kidushin Daf Ayin, begin on the top line of the Amud, where the Gemara continues the discussion of the previous Daf. We were discussing regarding the opening words of this parak, Asar Yochasin. There were 10 levels of lineage that came up from Bavel, and the Gemara is bringing proofs how we know all these 10 different types came up. We already discussed Kahani, Levi, Yisraeli, Chalali, and now we're up to Geri v'Charari. How do we know that these types came up with Ezra from Bavel? Asher is caused by the Bekazach and the Cheskel turned to Daf Chaim. Today's Daf should be Eschus v'Achin b'nei Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael and throughout the world. Some of these discussing today's Daf are Asar Yuchsin, like we said, the 10 different types of Yichus, showing that they came up with Ezra from Bavel because he wanted to make Bavel like a Kiselis Nikia, make it totally refined. We discussed the topic of Ishashin again. It's like marrying a woman that's not really appropriate for a person. Kala Paisel, but Mumma Paisel, whoever invalidates, finds flaws in other people, it's with his own flaw that he's projecting onto the other person. To utilize and to ask about how a woman is doing. Koinaz pun, the kahanim who are brazen. Taras mamzerim, the way of purifying people that are mamzerim. So begin the current Daf Ayin, top line of the Amid. Again, we're in the middle of talking about Asar Yuchsin. The Gemara is up to the part of Geri v'Charuri, that they were converts and they were emancipated slaves who came up with Ezra from Bavel. Says, what do we know they came up with Ezra from Bavel? So Rav Chizdi brings a pasuk Damakra, says the pasuk in Sefer Ezra, V'chol hanivdol metumas goyeh ha'oretz aleim. Whoever was separated from the purity of the nations of the world came with them, meaning they were not Jewish, but they separated, which includes converts and slaves, which became slaves and then became emancipated. They're separated from the Tumas Amim. They came up with Ezra from Bavel. Okay, next category, Mamzeri. Menolim, where do we know that Mamzerim came up with Ezra from Bavel? It says a post in Nehemiah. It says, Yishma san bala tachoirani, v'tuvya ha'eved amoni. So we have to focus on Tuvya. Tuvya was an Eved Amoni, because we want to know how there's Mamzerim, okay? It says later on, Kiram Yehuda, there were many in Judea, Ba'ali Shvu'aloi, people that were men of oath to Tuvya. Why? Ki chasenhu l'Shechanya ben Arach. So this Tuvya, again, who was the Eved, was a son-in-law by Shechanya ben Arach, who was a Jew, who was Yisrael. So that means to say this Eved, Tuvya, married a Yisraelis, the daughter of Shechanya ben Arach, and by Yochanan benai, his son Yochanan, Lokach es bas Meshulam ben Berechia, he took a daughter of Meshulam ben Berechia. Okay, so says the Gemara, so the Tana of our Mishnah holds, ve'eved, if a non-Jew or a slave, haba bas Yisrael, that is intimate with a Jewish woman, havlad mamzer, the child's a mamzer. So you see that by the times of Ezra, that who came up was this children of Tuvya and this Jewish woman. That's a Eved, haba bas Yisrael. And that's a Vlad Mamzer. So you see that there was a Mamzer who came up with Ezra. Says the Gemara, wait a second, Vlad Mamzer. That works according to the one who holds that, yes, the child of such a union is a Mamzer. The one that says, no, we go after the mother, no other Jewish woman, and the child, and we don't go after the father because the father Eved has no chayis, has no yichas, so the child's going to be kosher. Michael, what are you going to say? You don't have a proof that there were imam Mamzerim that came up with Ezra. Vesu, moreover, is b'mai davale bani. Who said this Tuvya and his son had children from these wives, from the daughter of Shechenya and the daughter of Meshulam, even though he had a son, maybe it was from a different wife. Maybe they didn't have sons. How do you know? You're saying that, he got married to a Jewish woman and the children was there. Who said they had children? How do you know Mamzer came up? The question number 3 is, even if they had children, who said they were here in Bavel? Because that's what Talmud Bavli is being said. They were here and they went up to Eretz Yisrael, that they had wives and children that they went up from Bavel. Maybe in Eretz Yisrael they remained from the days of Gedaliah ben Achikam, them and the Shechenya and Meshulam, and that's where they married Tuvya and his son, their daughters. So if that's the case, they didn't come up with Ezra; they were there in Eretz Yisrael. So how do you know that there were Mamzerim who came up with Ezra? So the Gemara says, you're right, it's not a good source. Eli, you have to bring a different pasuk. Mahacha, pasuk Nehemiah says, Ve'ela ha'olam mitel melach. These are the ones who came up from Tel Melach, Tel Charasha, Keruv, Adon, Ve'imer. So this is allegedly places that they came up from, and they went up to Eretz Yisrael. And they couldn't say the house of their fathers and their descendants im Yisraelim if they were from the Jews. That's what the pasuk says. Now, the Gemara translates Tel Melach. What is it? It means a mound of salt. That was what the town is called. But why is it called that? This refers to people that their actions are similar to the actions of Sodom. which, as we know, Sedoim, they were very licentious. They were magalarayis, like it says in Bereshit Gimel, roim v'chatoyim. What does that mean? Roim means they were bad with their bodies. Chatoim, they were sinners with their money. As the Gemara says in Sanhedrin of Kovtes Beis, we'll see next week's parsha, that they were, what they would do is actually they would injure the friend's wife and cause her to miscarry. So then the husband would say, yeah, keep her by you until she comes back the way she was, pregnant. So meaning let him impregnate her, they have injured her and caused her to miscarry. So they were all mamzerim. So they're essentially the people of Tel Melach. They were the people that they acted like mamzerim regarding the Jewish people. So it turned, just like Stom turned into a mound of salt, as we know with Ashes Light, and it was totally destroyed. So these people who came up from Babel to Eretz Yisrael from Tel Melach are mamzerim. That's why it was called Tel Melach. So to Tel Charasha, which is the terminology of machrish, of being silent, this someone who calls Atati, and the mother silences him, what we know as a shtuki, because he's not your father. So again, also mamzeris. And when the pasuk says, and they couldn't say the house of their fathers, vizaram, Rashi says, means, and their what seminates, meaning their mother, imi Yisraelheim, if they're from the Jewish people. So it's referring to they didn't know their father or their mother. If they're Jewish, Zewasufi, Shenesav Minashok, who is gathered in from the street, because in contrast to Shtuki, at least he knows who his mother is, that she's Jewish. Here, this guy doesn't know if he's Jewish at all, because he doesn't know who his father is, who his mother is. So again, these are all proofs of the names from the psukim here from the pasuk in Nehemiah that's indicating these are all mamzerim. Now, when it says in the pasuk Keruv Adon V'imer, allegedly these are names of places, but Amar Bavo, he inverts the pasuk and he darshans the word Adon like the word Adon, and Imer he expounds like the word Amar. Amar Adon, the master, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Ani Amarti Yisrael Lefanecha Shem Kekeruv. I said the Jewish people are going to be distinguished from me like the holy Kruvim in the Beis HaMikdash, like the Chayes HaKadosh, the holy Chayes, which are names of angels, that it says in Yechazkel Pnei HaKaruv, V'heim Samu Atzmam Kenamer, and they made themselves like a leopard, meaning like this wild animal that's not particular about mating with its partner. That's what the Jewish people like. I wanted to be that they should have faithful with their partner, and they're not, which can mean not with Hashem, it also can mean not with their spouses, but again, also indicating that these people were having illegitimate children, and therefore they were mamzerim that came up. Or Ikadam, another pshat in the pasuk we just said, Amar Bavo says, Amar Adon, the master says, Hashem, even though they make themselves like a leopard, that they're not faithful, they're still considered distinguished in front of me, like they Kruvim, so a different perspective on what Hashem is saying there in that pasuk. Now, related to that pasuk we just mentioned, so Amar Rabbi B'chani says, whoever marries a woman that's not appropriate for him, meaning she's lower than him. So the word could mean, in this context, not as silence, but as plowing. It's as if he plowed the entire world, and he planted it with salt, which obviously would not be getting anything out of it. And that's the idea of seminating, having a relationship with a woman, and not getting anything out of it. Like it says in Nehemiah, which the pasuk we just brought before. And these are those who come up from the mound of salt, Tel Charasha, which is because they couldn't say over their yichus, so you're calling it Tel Melach, because it's like this idea of plowing, and meaning it's ishashin again this loy that's not appropriate to him regarding the yichus. That's the same wasting as if you're plowing the whole world and planting salt. Related to this idea, Amar Rabba Rav Adam Rav, it says, Kol hanosi isha l'shum mammon, whoever marries a woman for money, he's going to have children that are not appropriate. Shemak says the pasuk in Hosea, it says, Bashem Bagadu, and Hashem, they were traders. Because foreign children they give birth to. Meaning, since it's from a woman that's really invalid for him, the only reason why he married her because of her money. So the pasuk concludes, as the Gemara is going to darshan right now, Yichlim Chaydesh Eschelkeim, meaning the money that he married her for is going to be consumed in 1 month, as the Gemara expounds. That's what's saying that it's Zarim, these children, because she's really puzzled to the person. He just married her for her money. But Shemetam, you can say maybe Mamad Palit. Maybe you can say, okay, he's going to have children that are not Mahugan, but maybe at least the money he'll get. It says now they're going to eat in 1 month their portion. Now, Shemitah maybe you can say chelkai. There's something the husband gets, what's called nichsitz and basel. Nichsitz and basel is the husband gets it, the whole thing, and when she leaves, when they get divorced, then he'll give it back to her. So maybe say his portion that he's trying to get out of it, maybe that will get lost. But chelka, not her portion, for example, what's called nichsi malug. This malug she holds on to, he just gets to use the payers. But she didn't do anything wrong because she's trying to marry someone that is more meyuches. If anything, he's doing the wrong thing. He's marrying this low-down girl because he just wants her money. So maybe you would say that wouldn't get lost. It says in the pasuk chelkehem, says their portions, that she loses her money too. Maybe we can say, okay, it's going to take a while, but at least he'll get a few good years out of this wealthy entrepreneur that he married. No, Tamalim says chaydish, 1 month and it's gone. My mashma says, what does that mean when it says chaydish? A month comes, a month goes, and their money is lost. Now, some say, again, it's like whoever marries a woman that's not appropriate for him, it's possible to him. Eliyahu binds him, ties him down, because someone who gets lashes in court, they tie his 2 hands on the beam, as the Gemara says, they tie him and they bind him. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, gives him the lashes with the whip. Betana, we learned, al kulam, on all of them, kahanim, labim, yisraelim, Eliyahu kaisiv, Eliyahu writes what we're going to say right now. The Kadosh Baruch Hu chaisim, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu signs. For example, let's say when he marries a woman that's not appropriate for him. Now Rashi brings in parentheses, which some take out the gears and some don't, that this Eliyahu cannot be Eliyahu Navi that's written in the Psukim, in the Torah, because if that's the case, then before Eliyahu, who would do this binding or tying down? Must be some malach, which he's a scribe above, but be that as it may, they write and Hashem signs the following. Woe to someone who invalidates his children, his descendants, and he creates a deficiency, a pgam in his mishpach, in his family, and again it's like that he marries a woman that's not appropriate for him. And Eliyahu ties him down, and Kadosh Baruch Hu gives him the lashes. Now, moreover, talking about a paisel, someone who is doing things that are being a psul, so a related idea, the Gemara says, V'chal ha-paisel, whoever is constantly blaspheming or saying negative things about families, he himself is pasul. He himself has a flaw. And he's never going to talk about any praise ever. Meaning, it's not the norm of a guy who has some skeletons in the closet to talk about any praise about people. Always negative, always saying negative things. That's a person who he's pasul, so therefore, the Gevilna has a different girsa, not medab b'shivcha lo, not forever, but shel of the world, meaning he's of people. It's a similar idea, but he's never going to say any praise about anyone else. Always negative, saying, "Oh, you heard what he said, you saw what he did, whatever." Blah, blah. That's a pasul. Rabbi Shloimy says, moreover, b'mumay pasul, which not only does he find flaws in people, his own flaw, a well-known psychological defense mechanism called projection, and the Baal Shem Tov was known for this idea. What you see outside, kala pasul, b'mumay pasul, whoever invalidates things when he's saying, you heard how long, you heard how this, and this. It's always, you don't realize your subconscious, how deep down it goes. You're seeing the negativity in the world, what's really negative inside of you. And therefore, and not only that, it's the actual pasul inside of you that you are. You're just not conscious enough to realize that. That's what you're invalidating. The Gemara brings a story. Who governed him in Narda? There was a man from Narda. He came into a butcher house, into the butcher store in Pumbediza. He gets online, says, Holy Bister, give me meat. They said to him, okay, no problem. Wait until the Heisbucher, until the attendant of Rabbi Yehuda bar Cheskel takes first, he's waiting here online. And then we'll give you your meat. So this guy has no patience. This guy double parked outside, whatever. He comes in. Amar says, Man Yehuda bar Shviskel, right? His name was Rabbi Yehuda bar Cheskel. So he says it in this nickname, in this derogatory terminology, which Rashi says Shviskel means like a glutton. Because like the Gemara says in Pesachim Daf Tzadik Vav, Shvisky means like roast. Who's this guy who's making barbecues all day? The Kadimli, the Shakam and Kamoi, who's taking and coming before me and taking. So he was derogatory regarding this. So Azlu Amr Le Rabbi Yehuda, they told Rabbi Yehuda, who it was his Gaba that was insulted of Rabbi Yehuda himself. So Shante, so he excommunicated this individual, as we find that we could put someone in Chayrim for the covet of the Rav, as the Gemara says in Moed Cut and Daf Tezayin and Alf. So Amru, they told Rabbi Yehuda that actually Rogel, that guy who cursed you out by the butcher store, he is accustomed to Kari Inchi. He calls people Avdi, slave. He's like, that was his derogatory term that he would knock people, say slave. So Achras Allah the Avdehu. So Yehuda made an announcement, Klop and Shul, this guy's an Eved. So Azal, who that guy went, Azman Eladin L'Kamid Rav Nachman. He summoned him to a din Torah in front of Nachman. Haytachin, making a Klop and Shul and making an announcement that I'm an Eved, a chutzpah. So I say Piskat Azmana. So Rabbi Yehuda gets the summons from the court of Rav Nachman. So Rabbi Yehuda came to Rav Huna. So Rabbi Yehuda went to Rav Huna to consult with him. Should he go in front of Rav Nachman or not? So Amalei said to him, Ezel or Lezel, should I go or should I not go? So Amalei said to him, the truth is, the truth is, you really should not have to go in front of Rav Nachman for this subpoena to come to his court. Shouldn't cover about? You're a great person. You're greater than him. You're the Rosh Hashiva in Pumbedisa, and Rav Nachman was the Rosh Hashiva in Arda, and he was a judge of the Resh Galusa. He was the son-in-law of Chasna de Bein Nasi, as the Gemara says in Chulin Daf Kuf Chavdal Amid Aleph. It says, but Elam Shem Yikra de Bein Nasi, but because of the honor of the household of the Nasi, because Rav Nachman was the son-in-law of the Nasi, Kumzil. So get up and go, meaning sometimes you have to honor also the item from the Rosh Hashiva from the Rebbe. So okay, so go. Fine. Also, he comes there, and obviously he's insulted. He says, you're giving me a summons to come to your bezdin. Do you know how much more I'm bigger than you? But okay, he comes. He sees him making a fence around the roof where you have a halacha of making a makkah. Amalei says to him, don't you hold of this teaching of Shmuel that says, but once a person is appointed to be a leader over the community, it's forbidden to him to do work in front of in front of other people, in front of three people, because it's a disgrace and it's a low lowness for the generation that they're subjugated to this person who has no one to work for him. Rebbe, you see a Rebbe outside fixing the steps and saying what it's not a appropriate thing here. You're making the makkah. If you're the grace Saruv, you should have people doing it for you. Amalei said to him, Purta de Gunderisa, which Gunderisa is in one of the languages is the word makkah. It says a kleina makkah, a small fence with the kavod I'm doing, So Amalei said to him, Rabbi Yehuda, again, he's trying to get him. He says, Misanya Maka Dasib Bayraisa. Well, what's this Lashon Gunderisa? What are you talking about? You don't like the word Maka that it says in the Torah? Or Mechitza Rabbana, that the rabbis always use the word Mechitza, partition. But why are you talking in this twisted, distorted type of wording? Which, as Rashi tells us, Rabbi Yehuda, his intention was to catch Rav Nachman on some mistakes to provoke him, to let him know that don't try to think you're better than me, as if you're summoning me to come to your court. He's trying to show him, Mr. Kleiner, what I'm saying? Don't mess with me, right? So, Amalei, so Rav Nachman, okay, he keeps on talking. He says, Yosef Mar Akarfita, let the master sit here on the bench. Amalei said to him, do you hate the terminology that the rabbis always use with the word safsel? Or the word that common people use with Itztabah? What are you saying this word Akarfita? So Amalei says, okay, Lechelmar Esranga, let the master have eat a esrig. So Amalei says, Hachem Shmuel. Shmuel said like this, Esranga, he's saying in this fancy way, Esranga, adding on some more sophisticated language, Tilsam B'Ramais Rucha. It's because a third of him is arrogant, he's changing his words and he's making it more, he has to show off how fancy he says it, Esranga. He says, Oy Esrig, the Korean Rabbanan. If you use the word Esrig, the way the rabbis speak, Oy Esraiga, the Minchi, or Esraiga, the way people speak. What do you Esraiga? It's more sophisticated, more upper crust type of way of saying it. Somebody says to him, Lishtimar Anvaga. Says, let the master drink Anvaga, which was a cup that was revius, which they used to drink one cup from this beverage that was made to drink in the morning, which the Gemara Brachas Daf Nanav called it asparagus. It's not asparagus, it's something else. But that's what this medicinal drink, this tonic was asparagus. What he used the word anvaga. Amalei said to him, "Misani asparagus the Rabbanan. Do you hate the wording that the rabbis use, which is asparagus? Or ampik daminchi, or the word ampik that people use? What are you saying on vaga?" So Amalei said to him, "Okay, Tasi Dainag, let Dainag, let my daughter, who her name was Dainag, come Tashkinan, and she'll give us to drink." Amalei said to him, "This is what Shmuel says: You're not allowed to utilize a woman because you don't want to teach her to be accustomed to becoming amongst men. What are your daughters going to be coming in, but with us men here giving us to drink?" So on that he said, Reb Nachman said back to him, he said, "But Ketane, she's a little girl. She's 8 years old." So he said back to him, Shmuel explicitly said, we don't utilize a woman at all. Whether she's an adult, whether she's a minor, doesn't make a difference. Okay. So then Reb Nachman said to Rabbi Yehuda, he says, Mar Shlama Yalta. Do you want to send a greeting to my wife, Yalta? Tell the Rebbitzin that you're here. Should I tell the greeting that Rabbi Yehuda is here? Amalei said to him, Shmuel says like this: Koil bi'isha erva. The voice of a woman is considered an erva, like it says in the pasuk in Shir Shema, Shmi'ini es koilech. It's one of the things of the sensual elements of a woman. Let me hear your voice, and if I'm going to ask her how she's doing, she's going to respond, and that voice that she's going to use is erva. I don't want to have erva. So Rav Nachman said to him, but after it's possible to send her a greeting al shliach through a medium, through an agent, and you won't hear her response. That Amalei said to Machim, is what Shmuel says as you continue to come in base. Ein shaylin b'shloim isha. We don't ask regarding how a woman is doing. Why? Rashi says, because by greeting her and sending her regards, so then they're going to become accustomed one with the other through the medium, and then it's going to come to a certain endearment relationship, and then it leads to different things, as we know in the age of technology that we live in, that these things could, even though it's through some medium, it could lead to some levels of chiba. It brings, the Gemara says in Bam Mitzida Pezayim and Aleph, that you could be shal b'shleim isha al bala. Says Taisus, that's dafka b'sheila shalom, to ask how she's doing. But to send her a greeting, even through her husband, that would be forbidden. Send regards to your wife. No, that's forbidden. To ask the husband how the wife is doing, that you could do. You could say ayasar ishtecha. But no, don't say, send regards to your wife, because that is chiba, and that could bring to different things too. So Rav Nachman said to him, Al Yibala? What do you mean? Through her husband, meaning I'll be the shliach to send her. Amalei says, no, Shmuel says, we don't send a greeting to a woman at all, because again, she'd be like, he's such a caring person, so thoughtful, and blah, 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 and this and that, and one thing leads to another, and if we don't do that at all. So Shochalei de Beisu, so his wife Yalta sends to her husband, to Rav Nachman, and says, do me a favor. Sharelei Tigre, let him go already. Take care of his case, which that's the terminology of the Gemara. When you're quick to take a request of a person or his judgment to get rid of him, to quickly get rid of him. It doesn't make you like the rest of the ignorant people. He's mocking you. He's making a mockery out of you. Everything you're saying, he's showing you that you don't know anything. Quickly, his wife is saying, take care of him, because it's getting difficult here. So Amalei, so Rav Nachman says, Rabbi Yehuda, like how did you end up over here? Why you wander over here? Why is the master here? Amalei said to him, the master sent me a summons to come to him. Amalei says to him, what? And he says, I don't even understand the conversations of the master to be able to talk in the refined language that the master talks. You think I'm going to be sending you, the great Rebbe, the Rosh Hashiva, the Rub, a summons? He takes the document of the summons out of his the frock, or Bekasher, whichever one, and he takes it to Rav Nachman. He shows him. He takes it from his bosom, and he shows him. He says, "You sent me a summons." Omalei, he said to him, here's the person and here's the summons. Similarly, Rav Nachman says to him, okay, look, since the master came already over here, let him talk about the rights that he had regarding this fight with that person, so that the people shouldn't say that the rabbis flatter each other, that they just, backroom, things going on, and that they don't really care, and they're not going to enforce the law. one Rebbe washes the other Rebbe's hands. We don't want to do that. Let's at least talk about what happened. So Rav Nachman says to him, "My time why did you excommunicate that person?" He says, because he disgraced my agent, my husband, my gaba was there in the store by the butcher, and he disgraced him. He says, but the nagdimar. But why didn't the master give him lashes? The Rav would give lashes to whoever pained the agent of the rabbi. So as the Gemara says in the first paragraph, so he says, the other many I did better. Well, I did something more stringent than that to penalize him. Then I excommunicate him. Okay, it says the Gemara, but Rav Nachman asked him, he says, "My tam achris ma'ar le'da avdahu." Why did the master make an announcement that he's a slave? You went and you made a klap in shul that he's a slave. Why did you do such a thing? So Amalei said to him, because the ruggle, the kori inchi avdi. Because since he always would call people slaves, vitani, and we learned in the Brisa, kala paisel, whoever invalidates, knocks, is negative about other people, Apostle, he is a flawed person, and he's never going to talk about anything positive at all. Shmuel says, and you know what? And as we see, Rabbi Huda was constantly quoting his Rabbi Shmuel, and this is the teaching that he's quoting. And actually, what is it that he says negative? Is his own mum. So if he's always calling people slave, 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 must be he's a slave, and therefore I made that announcement. So that Rav Nachman said to me, he says, wait a second. When the Shmuel say this teaching is lamechish, is to be concerned for it. Did he say that you could be so confident? In other words, you're such a confident psychologist that you could know that this is what he's projecting, that this is what is going on in his genetics is that he's a slave. How can you make an announcement? The Gemara tells us, however, the hachi in the meantime, asahu bardinim in Ardai. His litigant, that person came from Narda. So that litigant came and said to Rabbi Huda, he says, what? You're calling me a slave? What do you mean? I come from the Hashmonean dynasty of the kings. How could you call me, who were the Kahanim? How could you call me a slave? Amalei says, I just got you. Again, he's quoting his Rebbe. This is what Shmuel says. Called the Amam and the Beis Chashmonoi. Whoever says, I come from Beis Chashmonoi, Avdahu is a slave. Why is that? So Rashi brings, because Hordus killed all the descendants of Beis Chashmonoi. And Hordus was a slave, and he ruled over them. Now, he called his sons Beis Chashmonoi, because he wiped them out. He was a slave from them. And Mistama, he didn't have his children marry Jewish women, because they were careful to marry their daughters to slaves, and therefore they were all slaves. So therefore, the fact that you're saying you're from Beis Chashmonoi, you just pointed out, you proved my point that you are a slave. And we see how far it goes, that even if a person is not even conscious, it's unconscious, that this projection of something so deep, maybe a prior life or who knows what, that you're an Eved, that he even know about, that was from generations before, and that's why he's calling people Eved. So Amalei Rav Nachman said to Rabbi Yehudi, says, doesn't the master hold lahad amar Rab Abba amar Rav Huna amar Rav called tamachachim shemayr halacha ba? Any tamachachim that's coming to instruct regarding a certain halacha that he is saying over. Im koydem ma'isa amra, if he said over this teaching to his students in the name of his teacher before an actual incident happened. So generally they listened to him. In other words, he's believed to say it at the time of the story because he had been saying this before the story happened. But vimlav, if not, they don't listen to him. He's not believed to testify in the name of his teacher because it's maybe because of the story that he's making up this thing and saying, oh, my Rebbe said that. Like you're saying it now, but how do we know that what you're saying, that whoever says he's from Beis Chashmonoi is an Eved, you're making up the teaching right now because the guy said he's from Beis Chashmonoi. He's like, oh yeah, Beis Chashmonoi, my Rebbe. If he would have said this over in the shiur a week before what happened there to Saul, and he's saying, oh, he's going to be tzudis or whatever. Okay, we know you're saying now nuchtim lachamaisi. That's showing oisa batal. So Amalei said to him, ha'ikar Rav Masna the koi kavah. He said, don't worry, there's another Amoira, Rav Masna, who he holds like me. He also heard this from Shmuel, and he's going to know this teaching without having heard this story. Now the Gemara tells interestingly, Rav Masna he didn't see Narda for 13 years. That day, he came to town. Amalei, Rabbi Yehuda said to him, he couldn't tell him yet what because he couldn't hint to him what it was, because they had to hear that he knew this halacha from before. And so he said like this: does the master remember what did Shmuel say? When he had 1 foot on the edge of the river, and he had 1 foot on the bridge or on the boat to cross the river. That's how much they remember their what they learned from their Rebbe. This is 13 years. It wasn't Arda. Wonder how many years ago they heard this teacher from Shmuel. He said, remember when he had 1 foot on the foot and he had 1 foot on the bridge? Remember what he said? Well, he says, of course I remember. This is what Shmuel said. Called the Amam and Reis Chashmanoi Malka Kasin. Whoever says I come from Reis Chashmanoi, Avdu, he's a slave. Because what happened was like this: the only one that remained from them that wasn't killed out by hordes was one young girl, the Solkala Igra. She went up to the top of the roof, Viram Yukala, and she screamed out on the top of a long zvam, and she said, called the Amam Beis Chashmanoi, no, whoever says I'm from Beis Chashmanoi, Avdu, who is a slave, because she knew that Hordes was going to take over and saying that he's Beis Chashmanoi and he's a slave and all his children are slaves, and Nafla Me'igr or Misa, and she fell from the roof and she died. So Achaz Allah, the Avdu, they made an announcement, Taka, this guy is a slave. So what happened was, that day, Akron Kamak Subas ben Arda, many ksubais, the marriage documents, were torn up in Harda because of the wives of that family who were allegedly Beis Chashmanoi, this dynasty of this family. Turns out they're all frauds, they're all slaves, and they're all flawed characters.
Didn't anybody that was signing all these ksubas say 1 minute?
There's a lot of cover-ups, as we'll see in the next dafim, about, yichis, you have to do some good digging. Only the good historians are able to find all the good schmitz, you know what I'm saying? But this is what it was. This is that they didn't know. Kika Nafik, when Rabbi Yehuda left, Nafik Abbasrai Lemigime, they went after him to stone him because he just uncovered this whole plot where everyone was just like covering, making like as if they were the upper echelons, and turns out these guys are the lowest from the Avadim. So he said to them like this: Ishtiku, shtiku. If you're going to be silent, be silent. Viloi, he has blackmail. Magalina alaichu, I'm going to reveal regarding you guys, Hadam Shmuel, what Shmuel says. He says, again from his Rebbe, Tartiz Zariyasa, there's 2 families, Ikar ben Arda, that's in Arda. Chad de Mekarya de Beyaina, one family is called the Beyaina. Chad de Mikra, and one is called the Be'arvasi. And one is that of, actually this week's parasha, of the dove, and one is the raven. V'samanech, and the mnemonic to remember is Tamei Tamei Tar Tar. The impure bird, which is the raven, that family that's called Be'arvasi, who knows what type of they have on that logo, whatever they have, the family crest, the raven, that's their old tummy. And Tar, the one that's the dove, is pure. So in other words, I have more secrets to say. Who knows what he said? Well, he was telling them. Maybe he says, I'm not going to make the announcement on the Ram call to say, those you wissen, as Right. People know to be careful. Right. Only because if you're not going to Right. So we're going to see in the Gemaras later on about that discussion about exposing families or not. But he's saying that he didn't say exactly what it means. The Gemara itself doesn't say, but it could be mamzerim, it could be whatever. It could be there's a family that's tamei, that's impure. What? He didn't say which. He didn't. It could be something else also besides that. It could be besides the one. There could have been some other siblings that married in or whatever. It could have been other things too. It doesn't say. Could be some Rishonim say exactly what it's referring to. He didn't say this. Have something, right? And this that it says that kihad is that it says hadam Shmuel. It's the Gemara explained. Yeah. So he didn't spill the beans yet. So the Gemara says, so they threw down the stones that they had, that they were going to stone with from their hands, and there were so many stones, become Atma Benar Malka. The stones that they threw into the river made a dam and stopped the water from passing, because that's how much they wanted to stone him. They're ready to kill him. And then also, what the question is, those people from the Mishpuche, from Hashmonaim, were the one who really upset at them, but there was not a difference. Why didn't they keep on throwing the stone? What prevented them from Right. The question is who. Right. Question is who. I mean, it might have been other people that they. It says Menashe Oisim Mishpacha, that the wives of that family. Yeah, could be, and could be there could have been more information that would have made it even worse. So the Gemara tells us related that Machar Rabbi Yehuda, the same Rabbi Yehuda, he made an announcement b'Pumbedisa, which that's where he lived. So he was obviously making exposés, Rabbi Yehuda. So Adda v'Yonason, he said, these two individuals are avdei, they're slaves. I mean, people, you didn't know everyone. A guy comes to town looking, some dressed up with some nice hat and whatever. Says they're slaves. Yehuda bar Papa is mamzer, he's a mamzer. Bati bar Tuvia b'remus rucha, because of his arrogance, leishokol gita de chirusa, he didn't take a document of emancipation, meaning he could have been freed as a slave, but he was so arrogant, he didn't take a get shiur, and therefore he's also not freed. Now, it wasn't only Rabbi Yehuda, Machras Rava b'Mechuza. Rava made an announcement in Mechaiza, which is where he lived. He said, Baloi, Danoi, Taloi, Maloi, Zagoi, which Rashi says either it's names of places or names of families. Kulam Lebsul. They're all puzzle, all these characters. Rabbi Yehuda, he says, the family that's called Goivoi are really Gavoinoi, meaning because they were Gavoinim, so in Bavel, they changed it, you change your family name a little bit to make it a little bit more, not so, you're trying to be a little more discreet. They call Gavoi, because it's very close to the word Gavoinim, but basically to say just like the Gavoinim, the Nesinim apostle, so to this family's apostle. And the family that's called Durnanisa really stands for Derjoi Nisinoi, the village of Nesinim, because the word Dur means village, meaning because it was a village of Nesinim, it was called Duraninus, which basically also the Nesinim also are the Gavoinim, also apostle. So just know that in the name you could figure out that these were psulim. Rav Yosef said, "Hi Bei Kubi de Pumbedisa." There's a village near Pumbedisa called Bei Kubi. Kulam Davdi. They're all slaves there. Rav Yehuda Mishmul, he says, Arba Meyos Avodim, 400 slaves. And some say that Arbas Alafma Avodim, that actually there's 4,000 slaves. Hayulai Lefashcha ben Imer. Fashcher ben Imer, who was in the days of Yirmiyah, had either 400 or 4,000 slaves, and they all got intermarried in the Kahanim, where they married the daughters of Kahanim because these slaves, they conducted themselves as Kahanim because they were Avdei Kahanim. They were the slaves of Kahanim. Now, Avdei Kahanim eat Truma. That's always the concern. They say, if you eat Truma, they might take you up to Ich. It says, oh, this is eating Truma, So they married the daughters of Kahanim. And any coin that has brazenness in Ilamahem is only from those slaves that intermarried into the daughters of Kahanim. Abaya says, and you know what? Kula Yasvin Beshuda Dimnarda. They're all sitting in the Mizrachvant. Doesn't say that, but it says all in the row of Narda, like they're the ones, the distinguished ones. These the grace, Knakas. These are all from the Avadim, the brazen. They take the positions or whatever. They're all from the Avadim. But this disagrees with Rebbe Lazar. Because Rebbe Lazar says, if you see a coin with a brazen forehead, don't think twice about him like after his family lineage, because they're actually very contentious people. Shlomo says in the pasuk in Hosea, "Amcha kimeribi kohen." Your people are like the quarreling kohen. Basically, the kohanim have that midah of azas metzach, and therefore, if you see a kohen that's brazen, don't like think, oh, maybe he's apostle. Now, related to what we mentioned before on Amud Aleph, going back to the yichus, Amud Oven. But Rav says, against like this idea we were mentioning in previous on Amud Aleph. Whoever marries a woman that's not really appropriate for him, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes and he brings down his divine presence, made al shvatim, so he testifies regarding all the tribes. They made a love, but he does not testify regarding this person. Like says the pasuk in Tehillim, says Shifti Ka Idus Yisrael. The tribes of God, testimony to the Jewish people. When is a testimony for the Jewish people? Those that are Jewish, he testifies on them that they're from him. That's when the tribes are shiftika. But when you're not shiftika, when you're marrying a woman that's not appropriate for you, and again it's like, then God does not testify on that type of person. Amar Rabbi Chanina says, "Kadosh Baruch Hu Mashra Shechinash, Kadosh Baruch Hu goes and rests His divine presence. Ein mashra ela mishpachos miyuchasas shab Yisrael. He only rests His divine presence on the families that have yichus in the Jewish people. Somebody says the pasuk in Yirmiyah. Be'esahinu Hashem at that time says God, Eya lelihim. I'm going to be God, l'chol mishpachos Yisrael, for all the families of the Jewish people. Meaning, l'chol Yisrael einam. It doesn't say for all Jewish people. El l'chol mishpachos. Rather for all families, meaning the families that are totally Jewish, they're going to be for me a people. Now, actually, parenthetical, Rabbi Ravuni says, Zum Maili Yisera, this is an added benefit, Yesh Ben Yisrael, a game that there is between the Jewish person, what we call FFB, to Legerim, to a convert. Because the Ilabi Yisrael, regarding a Jew, it says, a pasuk in Yechezkel, like we just quoted, V'Yisrael Lelihim, that I'm going to be for them a God, meaning even though they're not going to be for me a people, but once I'm going to bring them close, then they'll be for me a people. Meaning Hashem does outreach first. Whereas by converts, the pasuk says in Yirmiyah, "Mihu is that arabes liber legeshes alaynu Hashem." Says Hashem, who is this that makes his heart a guarantor to come to me? And then it says v'yisi lilam, and they're going to be for me a people. And then v'noichi elechem lelehim, and I'm going to be for them a God. By gerim from heaven, they don't bring them close. Only when they first make themselves close first to be good, they become from God's people. Then God goes and makes Himself for them a God. Amar Rabbi Chelbe says, however, Kashim Gedim li Yisrael, converts are difficult for the Jewish people, kasapachas, like a nega of tzaras. Now, what does this mean? So Rashi says, because Gerim are new to Judaism, and they're not so careful with mitzvahs, they don't really know a lot. Now, people that are hanging around them get drawn after them, and they learn from their actions, and so it has a negative influence because they're acting very Jewish and they're very inspired, but they're not really keeping so well the mitzvahs. That's one pshat. However, Taisus brings that some say, because we know Kol Yisrael Rim Zelazeh, and the Jewish people now are going to have to take responsibility for the sins of the Gerim who don't know halacha so well. Which Taisus is not true, because Taisus proves that the Arvis was not for Gerim, as he proves how many responsibility they took, and there's a lot of Erev Rav, and they didn't take responsibility for the Erev Rav, so therefore that's not a consideration. Some say, he says, the reason why Gerim are difficult for the Jewish people, like a Sapacha, like a Nega, is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu warns the Jewish people in 24 places not to hurt the Gerim, and Taisus' words are V'ef sheshlei tzarim. And a lot of Gerim feel like this. It says, not possible not to pain the Ger. So therefore it's difficult for the Jewish people because the Gerim feel alienated and they don't feel accepted and wanted or whatever this and that. They don't feel understood. So that's why. Some say a different shot. Because it's through Gerim that the Jewish people are in Gullus. Because the Gemara Pesachim says, why are the Jewish people dispersed throughout the entire world? We have a Chabad house in every place in the world, more than all other nations of the world. It's so Kadeshi Teisvalim Gerim. It's so that we want that the Gerim, people should become close to Judaism, and Chabad probably has, who knows, and wherever, all over the world, people come close to Judaism and they become a Gerim. So Taisus, no, Taisus does not like that pshat, because Taisus proves that we find elsewhere that it's the problem with the Gerim for Jewish people that's difficult is after the Megayer, not before. And based on this pshat, it would be difficult for us that we're in Gullus before, so that they should become Gerim. But then he brings a pshat from Rabbi Avram Ger. Sounds like the Ger said a good pshat for the Gerim. He's learning in Esha Torah and Arsamer, and came with a good pshat. Why, not negative about the Gerim? He says because Gerim are Bekiim b'mitzvahs, and they're more medactic, because they're inspired, they're on fire, they love Hashem, and whatever, they have everything. And therefore it's difficult to Klal Yisrael, because Hashem says, look at the Ger. Look how inspired he is. Look how into Judaism he is. And look at you guys. You guys grew up in yeshiva and chadarim, this and that. Look at your fabrent, you're running anywhere but to shul, but the Beis HaMedrash. And he says you find like that in Malachim Aleph, and by the woman Hatzarfis, who said to the Navi, says, why are you coming over here? You're maskir savaini because you're tzaddik gomer. Up until now, I looked like I was worth something, but now you come, I look embarrassed, embarrassing in my mitzvahs compared to you. One final pshat is from the Reed that he says the reason why it's difficult is because the Jewish people get intermarried with them, and then the shchin is not shar on them because it's not mishpachas miyachasis, and that's actually why, says Taisa, it would seem that that's a correct pshat. That's why we bring the teaching of Rabbi Chelboy on the teaching of Rabbi Chama bar Chanina, which the Gemara is going to bring on the next daf, to show that like hey, wait a second, like you guys, you keep your family trees very clean, and now you're getting intermarried with other nations of the world and whatever. So there was a different pshatim in why it's kisapachas, but the Gemara brings Shalem, it's like it says a pasuk in Yeshaya, v'nilva hager alehem, that the convert joins them. The nisvacha beis Yaakov. Now the word nisvach really means like an addendum, and they get added onto the house of Jacob. But ksivach, it says over here, but nisvachu ksivasim says a pasuk by the negoim. It says sapachas. One of the types of negoim is a sapachas. So therefore, we see that the gerim are kashim liyisrael kitzapachas. Now, let's just finish this up. Maybe it says Kadosh Baruch Hu, as we continue to Ayin Alf and Alf, mitar shvatim. When Kadosh Baruch Hu goes and purifies the tribes, meaning he's miyachas them, he shows their yichus. Shifted shall Levi mitar tchila. So it's the tribe of Levi that it purifies first. Somebody says the pasuk Malachi. The Yoshav mitzaref, he sits refining mitar kesef, and he purifies the silver. The tears b'nei Levi, and he purifies the sons of Levi. V'ziki kaisim kezav uku kesef, and he purifies them like gold and like silver. V'hoyu lashem magisha mincha b'tzedakah, and they're going to be for Hashem bringing the flour offering with righteousness. Now Amir B'Shu ben Levi says kesef mitar mamzerim. Money purifies mamzerim. So many ways how to read that statement, but Rashi says that they're assimilated in the Jewish people because of their money, but that actually causes them to be purified. Because in the future, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not separate them, because once they became connected to many Jewish families, and if you look at the trees, you're going to see how if you look at and you study, anthropology, or you see like you look back on the genogram and you see how one person, you see their descendants, how interconnected they are, this mamzerus and so many families. So because they were wealthy and they got involved, so therefore that actually the money actually purifies them. Because Hashem says in the pasuk, "V'yashem mitzar from mitzar kesef." Hashem sits and he purifies and he refines and he purifies money, meaning those that got mixed into the Jewish people because of their wealth. And the end of the pasuk says, "My magisha mincha b'tzedakah." What does it mean? They bring the flour offering with tzedakah. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says, "Tzedakah as HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Yisrael." It's righteousness, it's charity that God does with Jewish people. Shemishpacha shenitma. That a family that already got mixed up, he'll leave it like that. That's Hashem's tzedakah, that he's not going to separate them. But once they got mixed in, they're going to stay mixed in. And as Rashi points out, B'Shum Levi holds that this mitar, it doesn't mean to purify, meaning he's going to separate the psulim. No, he's going to mitar them. He's going to say alt kusha and gives the blessing, and he says that the old blessing, and their money, that they're wealthy, that made them mitar all the mamzeres. Thank you to any time for hosting us.